Hello everybody, it's Jen, Scrapbena Creations. Here's the 5 cards I'm going to be making today with the Flavor of the Month December kit. Here's the first card, let's jump in. So I'm using this adorable little penguin stamp by Stamping Bella. And I'm using my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers here to color in this image. So I have the image stamped out on some Canson XL watercolor paper, and I've just taped that down to a bamboo chopping kitchen block. I've just used some micro pour tape to tape that down, and I'm using my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers here. I'm laying down the marker first, and then I'm taking some water, as you can see, and just bringing out the ink so that I have a watercolor look. I will list all of the markers that I've used in the description box below. I have an unboxing video as well, which I will link in case you want to see all the contents of the kit, but this is a very long video as it is, so I did separate both them out, which I usually do each month, just because some people like to see the unboxing and some people don't. So I'm going ahead here and laying down my first coat of color for most of the images. For the black on the penguin, I'm simply using the black marker. I'm not using any watercolor for that. It's a very tiny part of the image. For the hat, it was a little bit too bright pink than what I was wanting. So I brought in some red. Of course, I went outside the lines a little bit there. So I'm just dabbing that up with some clean water, and that's the beautiful thing about Zigs. If you go out the lines, you can just clean it up with some water and a paper towel. So for the face, I'm not using gray. I'm using this stamp as a guide. There's a colored image on the stamp, and they actually used a light blue for the penguin face, so I did that as well. Now I'm just adding some shading to the bottom. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with this image once I got it colored up. Here I'm still playing with that hat. I brought in some of a pale rose color just to really knock down that brightness. And to finish up, I'm just going to add some of that pink to the bottom of the scarf. I'm going to go over his little beak and his foot again, and the marshmallows. And now I'm bringing in a little bit of purple for that hat, and then I'm going to add a little to the shading on the mug just to bring that color in. Once I get this down, I believe I move on to creating the card. So this is going to be a fairly simple card because all of the work is really in the watercoloring. So I decided to use this gorgeous snowflake paper, and I cut the image out with a stitched oval die. The paper that I'm adhering to, the card base, I cut out with a stitched rectangle die, and I'm adding it to some of the pink cardstock that came in the kit this month. So really simple card. I'm going to adhere the oval down right to the paper. I am using my ATG adhesive for this because this is a glossy paper, and I want to make sure that it sticks. For the sentiment, there were a few that I could choose. I wanted something really tiny that would fit in the oval, so I chose the smile. And I thought I wanted it up on the top there, but I end up settling on down here at the bottom. I thought that was just something a little bit different. So I'm going to stamp that a couple times with my VersaFine Black Onyx ink to get a nice crisp image. And then I'm going to add some final details. I'm going to be using some gouache. This is a white paint. I didn't think my white gel pen would work very well over top of this image. So I'm just going to paint on some highlights on the cup. And then I'm going to move on to the scarf. Just really bringing in some nice white highlights. And I love the way it ended up turning out. I'm going to add some lines to the hat. I do have to go over it a couple times just because once the paint dried a little, I don't think my image was completely dry, so it did kind of sink into the paper a little bit, but that was fine. I just did a couple extra coats, and I really like how this turned out. I'm loving this paint. I'm kind of off of white acrylic paint. The gouache is a more opaque color. So there's the card. We'll move on to card number 2. I'm using this adorable little bear by Sunny Studio. I'm going to color him up super quick. I'm using C3, C1, C00, and then my colorless blender to blend that all out so that he looks like a white polar bear, but still has some shading to him. Such a cute little image and really easy to color up. I love polar bears. Polar bears, white rabbits, white cats, white mice. Super easy to color. Sometimes you just need that. These cards are definitely a mix of more, what's the word? Time consuming, I guess, to more simple. So I like to do a mix of those. So this coloring is fairly easy. For his scarf, I'm going to do some blues just because of the cardstock that I chose to use as the accent color for this card. Really working there to get that blended in. So I'm using B02, BG01, and B00. It's a really pretty winter blue, I think. Also kind of a robin's egg blue, but works well for winter. I kind of blended that back a little bit too much. I wanted it to be a little bit more darker shadows. So I'm just going over that a second time. I'm not worried about his nose. I am going to bring in a black gel pen to do his nose here, which is super cute. I'm going to fussy cut that out, and here we are on to the card. So I lost some footage. What I'm showing you is that I actually cut out a piece of, actually this isn't cardstock, sorry, the blue is pattern paper. So I wanted to line the outer edges of the card with the blue, but I needed some of that extra paper to complete the card because I'm using sketch number 2 as a guide. So I just kept my circle out of the center and added that gorgeous sweater pattern paper over top, which I love. I'm going to add this snowflake paper on the inside of the circle here. So I'm using this, like I said, as a guide. With sketches, I like to take them and make them my own and make them true to my style. So you can follow them completely or you can change them up. Now when I first started with this little guy, I wanted him to be holding a snowflake, but those 2 little snowflakes that came in my kit were a little bit too small to have in his hand, so I decided to put the large one beside him. And these snowflakes really pair well with that snowflake pattern paper that I'm using behind the polar bear. And then I'm going to add the other little 2 around the circle, making sure that they're still on the blue so you can see them. They do sort of get lost a little bit if they were to be on the gray pattern paper. So I've decided here not to put a sentiment on the front, and instead I'm going to put it on the inside. So I'm just going to take out the stamps and arrange it. The sentiment is sending big bear hugs. So cute. Big polar bear with big bear hugs. Adorable. So I'm going to stamp that up. I ended up using this insert, and actually no, that's the card base. It's been a long day of crafting. So I'm going to stamp that before I put the panel on. Then I decided to use some Hippo ink from Lawn Fawn. This is a gray ink, and I'm using one of the snowflakes that comes in that stamp set. And I'm just going to put that around the sentiment. And there's a tiny, tiny, tiny one which I love, so I thought that made for a really nice inside of the card. Just going to use my bone folder there to make sure that it's nice and flat. And here you can see where I cut out that circle. And now I'm going to adhere that to the card base, and that is card number 2 complete. For card number 3, I'm using the adorable little critter stamp set by Pink and Main. So there's quite a bit of coloring for this card. I did leave it in. I know a lot of you like to see the coloring so that you can use the colors as a guide. So we're going to work on the walrus here first, and I'm doing some warm grays for him. So warm gray 5, 3, and 1. He's so cute. I love all these little critters. They're so sweet. And they're pretty tiny, so they're fairly easy to color. You could even do a 2-color blend if you wanted to speed up the process. Gonna make this guy a little polar bear, so I'm bringing in my C3 and C1. Because this is so much smaller, I didn't bother with the C00. And I'm going to add some of these markers while I have them out to the white points on the other critters. I wanted to draw in the little tail for this fox. I think that that image could be a wolf or a fox. I colored it up as a fox for this card, but I think it would definitely work as a fox. So I'm just doing the white areas here. I'm just outlining the bottom of the snow caps. I left the tops white. Now I'm going to blend that out with the colorless blender again. Super simple. This card probably took me the longest. Well, this card and the shaker card that I'm going to do at the end were probably the most time consuming. I decided for the penguin I was going to use some warm grays. So I'm using W9 and W7, and I'm going to add that to the owl as well, just to bring that color in again somewhere else in the card. Here's my favorite combination again for foxes. I'm using my Spectrum Noir markers, and if you saw my sneak peek video, you will have seen the card that I did with the adorable foxes in the card kit this month as well. I'll link that so that if you missed it and you want to see it, you can easily find that. So just gonna finish him up. I love the pop of orange that this brings to the card. We'll pop a color. I colored the fish the same color as the fox, but I knew I wasn't going to use it, so I don't know why I did that, and I don't end up using it. For the ice, I'm just doing really simple here. This is B00, and I'm just going to blend that out with the colorless blender. I do need to refill this, so it was a little bit challenging to blend that out. For the hat and scarves on the little critters, I'm using a TB9 and TB7, which gives me like a navy blue color. And again, I chose these colors because of the pattern paper that I'm going to be using. And then I'm going to be pairing that with pinks, R83 and R81. You could really just do one color for the clothing as it's quite tiny. But that brightens it up a little, and it will tie it in with the paper. I did forget to color the little top of the penguin's hat, but I'm going to do that off screen. I'm bringing in 2 of the same markers that I used for the fox for the owl's beak and the penguin and their feet. Then I'm going to finish off with some black gel pen on their noses and give them some rosy cheeks, and I'll blend those out really quickly. And then we can move on to creating the card. I did fussy cut all of these out by hand. They were really simple, even though they're tiny. So now I'm just going to, I did cut out a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock with a stitched rectangle die. And I'm just going to be doing a very light blue background scene for these critters. So I'm using tumbled glass. For the bottom, I used my distress tool. For the top, I just wanted the littlest bit of color, so I'm using my blending brush. This is just a makeup brush, and I will link this below, as well as all the other products in case you want to see exactly what it is that I'm using. You can barely see the light blue on the top, but it is there and it does make a difference. So here's the pattern paper that I'm using, so you can see why I chose the navy blue and the pink for their little outfits. I'm going to try to get this centered. I don't know. I could not get this centered. You're going to see me tear this up here, and then I think I had to move it like twice. I don't know if it was the plaid that was throwing my eyes off, but you can see it's a little bit to the left. It's not equal, so I'm going to carefully peel that up. And then I'm going to stick it down again. And I honestly think I stuck it in the exact same place. And this was the third time I did it. So it is what it is. So anyhow, now I'm going to arrange the scene. I wanted to fit all of these onto the one card, which was a little challenging, but I just made them fit. I mean, a walrus on an iceberg is not going to be right in front of some mountains, but it's a card and it's fun and you can do whatever you want. That's what I think anyways. So I'm going to get the two images down that are going to be to the farthest left and the farthest right, and I'm going to get them equal spacing. I didn't want to cover up this stitched line, so I used that as a guide. I'm going to add my walrus on top of the iceberg. You saw there that my Nuvo is still giving me quite a bit of trouble. I had to take a pin. I don't know what's going on. My first bottle never clogged. This is the second bottle I've had and I'm having some trouble with it. But anyways, so then I'm going to add the other little characters here. I'm going to stick the polar bear behind the ice. I'm going to just lift that up a little bit. And then I'm going to put the fox to the front of that. And the fox, I think, ties in with the largest amount of pop of color in the front and then kind of making a triangle with the penguin and the owl. So for the sentiment, I'm going to use the sentiment Snow Much Fun. And at first I thought I wanted it centered on the card, but you'll see here in a second I do move it over to the left, which I think looks a lot better. So I'm going to place it there. And here's Lila. You see her face in the stamping platform. I had to move her off of the desk. I'm going to use the Night of Navy. This is Stampin' Up. I stamped that a couple times, just edited it out. And now I'm going to move on to adding some snow because I thought it's obvious about snow because they're on ice and there's an igloo, but I thought we needed to have some snowflakes just to finish off this card. So I'm bringing back the tumbled glass to do that, and that card is complete. So we're going to move on now to card number 4, which I love this little moose. It's so cute and it's so Canadian. I adore this image so much. And I had a ton of fun coloring him. Now I'm only using 2 markers for all of the coloring on the moose. So for the lightest parts, I'm doing E34 and E53. For the darkest, I'm using E27 and E57. So all of the markers, when I show the caps, the darkest is at the top, the lightest is at the bottom. Just in case you're ever wondering, because you might think the E57 should be darker than the E27, but it's not. Super easy to color. Oh, so adorable when he comes to life. At this point I was thinking, oh, that's a lot of that, this brown. But once I do the dark brown on his feet, I feel like it really balances it out. So I'm using E49 and E79 to do his hooves, and I think that just finishes off the image perfectly. So I will fussy cut him out, And for the card, I'm going to follow another one of the sketches. So I just cut out 2 panels with some stitched rectangle dies. I'm going to use a white card base. Still having trouble with my glue, so I edited that out. I'm going to lay this striped panel onto the card base, and then I'm going to use this blue polka dot paper on the inside of that. I thought this card would make a pretty good masculine card, maybe. I don't know. Let me know. Maybe there's too much purple, and then with the embellishments it may have gotten a little unmasculated, but is that a word? Emasculated, I think is the word. So I used some white glitter cardstock from my stash. I cut out this snowflake gray paper with a stitched square die, and I used that same square die for the glitter cardstock and just made my own little hill. Now I'm using the sentiment "You're so cool," as in cool as a moose. I don't know if that's a universal saying or if that's a Canadian thing. We have a store actually in our city that's called Cool as a Moose, and it's got a whole bunch of souvenir stuff. So as soon as I saw the sentiment, I knew I wanted to make a card with the moose with it. So I'm following the sketch. Well, you see here, they have it so that the banners are to the side. I'm flipping it and having the banners underneath the square to the bottom. So I'm just taking a bunch of the pieces of paper that I had. These are just scraps, and a lot of these are double-sided, so I just was able to cut a couple out from a few of the scraps that I had left. So I'm just trying to get my placement here where I want these all to go. And I think that looks really cute. Now I didn't want to move them, so I'm using some micropore tape again to make sure they stay in place. I'm just going to rub that onto the back of my hand a couple times so it's not very sticky. And I missed that one snowflake one, and then I put it in a completely different place. It still looks good, but I did like it the way I had it in the beginning. So I'm just going to gently add some ATG adhesive here. And the micropore tape just allows everything to stay in place, so I can flip that back over and lay it down on the card base. And then that one plaid one here on top of the purple isn't adhered at all, so I'm just going to do that really quickly. And then I can adhere the square on over top of that. Super fun. I actually really liked this sketch once I made it my own. So to finish off, I'm obviously going to add the little moose here. I use some liquid adhesive. I do bring in the stamp block just to make sure he adheres well to the glitter cardstock. And then for a final embellishment, I'm going to bring in some of the snowflakes. This snowflake die was in my kit. I'm not sure if they're all the same size or if they're different, but I cut that out of the glitter cardstock, and you can see on the sketch there is a circle element to that right bottom corner. I kind of wish I just would have gone with that one in the top right corner, but I end up putting all 3 because I'm so used to doing things in 3s. But I love this snowflake die. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I played here for a while with placement where I wanted to put it. I'm the exact same way with sequins. It takes me forever, and then I end up putting them right back where I had them to begin with. When I adhere this down, I just want to make sure that there's no... So it's on the piece of paper so that you can't see where one piece of paper ends and one meets, if that makes sense. I have a thing about that. So I'm making sure it's either on the blue or it's on the purple, trying to decide, and I go with it being on the purple for that particular one. I'm going to grab my frosted lace stickles that came in the Christmas Flavor of the Month card kit, and I'm going to add that over top of where there's a little bit of snow in the sentiment on cool, and then I thought I'd add a little bit to his nose. To finish off the card, I'm just going to use some black gel pen on his eyes, and the card is complete. So for card number 5, I'm making a shaker card. I loved this black piece of pattern paper. I realized this wouldn't be to everybody's taste, but you can flip it over and it's a different color on the back, or you could use any of the pattern papers for this card. This will just give you an idea, but I loved the black with the purple and the blue. So you just saw me, I was trying to figure out the best way to make this card. I want to cut out the cup. So I started off just roughly using an X-Acto knife. I'm not the greatest with this, so I'm just going to cut out the inside, and then I'm going to use my scissors to finish that up and get a nice clean edge. So that pops out really easy. And then I can use my scissors, and I'm not going to cut this whole thing out on camera because I needed to bring it up really close so I could see what I was doing. And plus, you get the idea. So once I get that cut out, I'm going to fill my shaker, and I wanted to use one of the snowflakes from this garland, which I thought was so pretty. I debated on putting more than one in, but I went with one in the end. I'm taking out the confetti snowflakes that are in this sequin pack that is all white. And I'm going to add a bunch of those into there. It was really hard to get them out. And then I'm going to take this beautiful sequin mix with the purples and the blue, and I was just going to put half of them in, and then I decided to put the entire pack in. And it filled the shaker really nicely, so I'm glad that I did do that. I want this to be see-through, so I'm actually going to use some embossable window plastic or acetate here. I'm just going to peel off the release paper really gently. And then I'm going to take a piece of this plastic. I'm going to use my embossing buddy here to get rid of static, but you can see it was still really staticky. So you just have to go quickly and put the plastic down. I'm going to make sure that that's good and adhered, and then I'm going to trim up around the shaker. I thought this was fun. I really like the idea of having a see-through shaker. I'm going to put the sentiment on the inside of the card so you can sort of see it from the outside. So in order to know where I needed to stamp, I just traced the inside of the mug here. And I'm going to use the sentiment, "Hope your day is so much fun." With all the snowflakes, I thought that that was fitting. So I'm just going to figure out where I want that, and then I'm going to stamp that out using my VersaFine. Super simple. I don't always finish the insides of my cards. This one I definitely wanted to because it is part of the card design. So I did use some red line tape here to adhere the shaker pouch to the card base. Just making sure to line that up. Fiddled with that a little bit, but I ended up getting it perfectly. And then I'm going to add this organza ribbon to the top. This is so pretty, this purple. So I like to use red line tape for this as well, and I just pull the ribbon as tight as I can and then run the red line tape across it. You can't see this once it's adhered down. So I wanted to do this before I put this piece of paper onto the card base so I could wrap it around the back. So I'm going to add that to the top here. Super pretty. I don't know, there's something I think so striking about that pattern paper. I love it, and I think it's really unique. So once I get that down, I'm going to adhere that panel onto the card base. I was so nervous I wasn't going to be able to line this up. I sort of get it a little wonky and then lift it up here really carefully, and then I'm able to get it the next time around. I did have to trim up the sides just a tad bit, but you can barely tell. So I'm going to add a bow with some glue dots. I just wanted something a little extra. I think it would be pretty to have a little tag coming from under the bow. Even if you use that smile sentiment on a little mini tag, that would be really cute. This would be a cute Christmas card as well, a very non-traditional one. So I had to remember to erase my pencil marks on the inside of the card. I was trying to be really careful not to get my finger in the sentiment, but of course I did. This white eraser is definitely a lifesaver. So there is the fifth and final card. I'm just going to show you a picture of the inside, and then I'll show you all of the cards here. So I've slowed down the video. This is normal speed. Let me know which card you liked this month. I absolutely love this kit. I think it's going to sell out. All links are below if you're interested in the kit. I would grab it sooner rather than later. Absolutely had a ball creating these cards. I hope you've enjoyed them. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you soon. Bye.